Today, I am sharing my top 20 fantasy characters, and this was not an easy video to make at all. It was really difficult choosing my top 20. Originally, this was going to be my top 10 fantasy characters, and then it quickly kept building as I was swapping characters and trying to figure out who to include, and I still wasn't able to include all my favorite characters, so it's gonna be top 20 this time. Now, all of these characters are great because they embody multifaceted personalities. They have compelling character arcs, and they have struggles that are relatable. All of these characters in my list are fantastically flawed and three-dimensional. They're ones that have had a lasting impact on me as a reader, but again, I wasn't able to include all the characters that I wanted to. I'm not even gonna be doing an honorable mentions in this video because it just took way too long to get this list figured out. But I also haven't read all the fantasy books out there, obviously, so if I'm not including some characters that you think deserve to be on this list, make sure to let me know in the comments all your favorite fantasy characters because I can't include them all. This is my list. Now, I am very much a character-driven reader. If I'm enjoying the characters in a book, then I'll likely forgive some of the other flaws in the book because I'm just enjoying my time inside the head of these characters and their relationships and everything. So again, if you have any recommendations for some brilliant characters, then make sure to tell me in the comments. And hey, that reminds me, real quick, this video is sponsored by Brilliant. Brilliant is honestly the best way to learn math, data science, and computer science interactively, with thousands of lessons from basics to advanced topics, and they have new lessons added monthly. Now, whatever your skill level, Brilliant customizes content to fit your needs and lets you learn at your own pace. So whether you're a student, a professional, or someone just wanting to explore new ideas, then Brilliant has something for you. What I think really sets Brilliant apart is its hands-on approach to learning. Instead of passively consuming information, like maybe watching a lecture video, Brilliant empowers you to solve problems actively. And if you don't know, interactive learning has been proven to be 6 times more effective than learning passively. And Brilliant's bite-sized lessons and challenges, they help you develop your critical thinking skills, which I think is a very important thing. And they also help you build daily learning habits. Maybe you're not sure where to start with programming. Well, their new Thinking in Code course gets you designing simple programs to solve real-world problems right away. I recently did this course and I found it a lot of fun, and the thing that I find with Brilliant is that it keeps me motivated to learn because the lessons are all very interactive and hands-on. There's daily challenges and puzzles and quizzes. You can try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days by visiting brilliant.org/capturedinwords or using the link in the description. And the first 200 of you will get 20% off Brilliant's annual premium subscription. Once again, thank you to Brilliant for sponsoring the video. Now, in The Lord of the Rings, I feel like the female characters often get overlooked because overall there's so few of them and they don't get a lot of page time. However, even though Eowyn doesn't have a lot of time on the page, she's still one of my favorites. Eowyn defies the traditional gender roles prevalent in Middle-earth, and she embraces her desire for valor and heroism by disguising herself as a man and joining the battle against the forces of evil. But then also beneath Eowyn's brave facade lies a woman grappling with a sense of inadequacy and a yearning for significance. And Eowyn's journey of self-discovery and her eventual acceptance of her identity as a shield maiden and a great woman of Rohan showcases the importance of embracing one's true self. She's also just a very loyal and compassionate character. Her love for Aragorn reveals a sort of vulnerable side of her, and her confrontation with the Witch King of Angmar is one of the most memorable and powerful moments in The Lord of the Rings. Next up, we have Drizzt Do'Urden, the iconic drow elf created by R.A. Salvatore. He's one of the characters on this list that's incredibly nostalgic to me. I was gonna put Elric of Melniboné in his place, but I ended up placing Drizzt here instead. Not just because of the nostalgia, but because Drizzt is also just a really great character. He stands out as an enduring symbol of hope and morality, and he grows up in the Underdark. He was born into a society of darkness justice and cruelty, but Drizzt rejects the expectations of his kind and embarks on a journey out of the Underdark and finds his own identity, along with some incredible companions, including Brunner Battlehammer, Catti-brie, Wulfgar, and Regis. Drizzt defies the norms of his race and embraces values of compassion, honor, and loyalty, and Drizzt's internal conflict between his own nature and his determination to stand against injustice just makes him such an endearing character. Also, shout out to Artemis Entreri from The Legend of Drizzt. He sort of started out as this kind of creepy villain, and then evolved into so much more. Anyways, I read the Drizzt books in middle school and high school, and I feel like I grew up with this character. I loved reading his inner musings, and even though the books do get a little bit formulaic, Salvatore does a really great job at developing Drizzt over time. Next up, we have Steris from the Mistborn Era 2 books, or the Wax and Wayne series by Brandon Sanderson. This is a character I really didn't like in the first book, The Alloy of Law, but then I just started to like her character more and more, and she's just such a fantastic character that I think is actually one of the most underrated Mistborn characters out there. Maybe I'm just unaware, maybe there is a ton of Steris love. I don't know. She's a character that really grew on me, and I realized that she's much more than the front that she puts up. And you know, I kind of have a soft spot for characters that underestimate how great they are, or just how useful they are. I love Steris bringing along extra vials of steel for Wax, or changing the whiskey in his bottles to fish oil. Also, I love the scene where she like duct tapes a shotgun to her thigh. Watching the relationship between her and Wax develop throughout the series is one of my favorite things of Mistborn Era 2. I just think she does so much to try to be a great wife, and she deserves a lot of credit. Also, she's just a really great representation of an autistic character, and you don't see that in fantasy, like, ever. Geralt of Rivia from the Witcher series is a very gritty and complex character. He's a highly skilled monster hunter with a reputation as a stoic and emotionless figure. However, we see that beneath his hardened exterior lies a deeply moral and compassionate individual. His experiences and relationships challenge societal norms, explore themes of prejudice, and delve into the complexities of what it means to be human. And really, the whole point of Geralt's character is that he's supposed to have been stripped of his humanity during the mutation, and his struggle with that and his constant fight to stay human in a world that simply expects him to kill and that treats him like the plague is what truly makes him such a fascinating character. Now, I'm still very new to Steven Eriksson's Malazan Book of the Fallen series, but Anomander Rake is already a favorite character of mine. The Son of Darkness is a very badass character. I mean, he's got white hair, onyx skin, he's literally a dragon, and he has an awesome soul-devouring sword. Honestly, his sword reminds me of Stormbringer from Elric of Melniboné. I'm assuming that was one of the inspirations for this character. But we can't just be blinded and reduce him to a badass and nothing else, because that ignores all the other qualities that make Rake such a phenomenal character. His compassion, willingness for self-sacrifice, and wisdom. Anomander Rake has a deep personality and a sense of responsibility, and he carries an unbelievable burden for an entire people and does so with an amazing amount of strength. This character is one of the reasons why I'm really excited to continue on with the series, but I'm honestly enjoying so many of the characters in Malazan so far, so I can't wait to make more videos on Malazan Book of the Fallen. Next up, we have Death. Now, I had a hard time choosing Death from the Sandman books by Neil Gaiman, or Death from the Discworld books by Terry Pratchett. Terry Pratchett ended up winning over here because I love Death in this series. I know he's nothing but bones, but he is one of the most fleshed out characters that I've read in Discworld. Death in Terry Pratchett's universe is not your typical Grim Reaper. After all, he does ride a noble living steed named Binky. The way that Death sees it is that his job isn't to kill, but to collect dead souls and wait for them to be reborn. He's a skeleton, but he's probably one of the most human characters in existence, and I love it. And throughout the series, Death is often the source of these hilarious and also introspective and philosophical moments. By far one of the best personifications of Death in literature. Let me know if you have any other favorite personifications of Death, because I don't know, I always find that really interesting. Next up we have Rikke from the Age of Madness series by Joe Abercrombie. Joe Abercrombie surprised me so much with this sequel series because I was not expecting to enjoy this new generation of characters as much as I did in the original First Law trilogy, but I did. I mean, these characters are so well developed, and I know everybody says that about Abercrombie. He has the best character work. I know it's redundant for me to keep on saying that, but Rikke, I think, was a fantastic character. Now, she is the Dogman's daughter, and she's blessed, or kind of cursed, with the Long Eye, which gives her glimpses into the future, but also paralyzing fits and loss of control of her bowels. Now, Rikke is a seer who takes power through intellect rather than violence on most occasions. Honestly, she wasn't my favorite in the first book, but as soon as we got to The Trouble with Peace, I feel like Rikke she really had some amazing scenes and growth throughout that book. I just really enjoyed how Rikke gave this window into this strange northern magic, and the way that Joe illustrates her powers and the ambiguity of her abilities, and the way that he sidesteps the common prophecy tropes by focusing on Rikke's manipulations, all while maintaining her likable personality. It's truly phenomenal. Her insecurities, her whininess, it soon turns to hard teeth and vengeance, which gave her all these more layers that I think were needed to get me invested in her journey, and her arc is just incredible. And she has one of the most dramatic character journeys of the entire series. Again, I'm so surprised that this new generation, this new cast, Rikke, Orso, Vic, Savine, all of them, they still hold up to the original First Law trilogy and that cast, which I thought was some of the best character work I've ever read. Now, the Mistborn books by Brandon Sanderson has one of the best magic systems I've ever read, but also some fantastic characters, Vin being one of my all-time favorites. I feel like I invested a lot of emotion into this character throughout the trilogy. Vin starts off as this ultimate underdog, and I am a huge sucker for underdog stories. When we first meet Vin, she's an orphan surviving on the ash-covered streets of Luthadel. She's very untrusting of others and grapples with her self-doubt. But then over the course of the books, we see some immense character growth as she discovers her powers, and we get to see the world work through her eyes. But it's her flaws and her internal struggle that makes her journey so relatable, and her eventual triumphs all the more satisfying. I would say it's the growth that Vin goes through that is a huge reason why she's one of my favorite characters. I was almost gonna put Kelsier or Sazed on the list, but I decided just to stick with Vin. Next up, we have Moiraine Damodred from the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. The old wise mentor trope has been done to death, honestly, in fantasy, but I never really get tired of it, and Moiraine is probably my favorite example of this trope. Obviously, Gandalf, I love Gandalf. I was almost gonna put him on this list, but Moiraine just feels more like a more rounded character, I guess. I never really get tired of the character coming from a very isolated location and not knowing much about the world. Then this mentor shows up that helps the reader and the protagonist learn more about what's going on and, you know, helps the protagonist discover their powers and all that stuff. It doesn't get old. I feel like it is a perfect staple of the fantasy genre. The literal farm boy trope, though, I do feel like is kind of old now. I don't like to see that really in modern fantasy. I mean, come on, they don't have to just be a farm boy. They could be anything else. But anyways, Moiraine, I feel like she has that perfect air of mystery to her. I love how Rand and the other Emmons Fielders don't really trust her at first. It takes a long time for their relationship to start to grow and for Moiraine to actually kind of become their friend. That adds a lot of tension to the story. And this is a nice difference from Gandalf, who is much more trusted by his party. I appreciate her character so much. I love her relationship with her warder, Lan. Honestly, that's one of my favorite parts of the Wheel of Time. And even in book 1, her speech about Manetheren is just so perfect. She deserves a spot on this list. And yes, when I say that she fills that old wise wizard trope, I know she doesn't look old, but she's old. I do want to say that the new Wheel of Time audiobooks narrated by Rosamund Pike, those are fantastic. Highly recommend checking those out if you want something a little different than the Kate Redding and Michael Kramer audiobooks. And next we have the private investigator and wizard working out of Chicago, Harry Dresden from the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. Now I do want to say that the first 3 Dresden Files books or so are definitely the weakest. I'm making my way through the series right now, and I especially found that those books didn't really represent women that well. There's some scenes that made me cringe quite a bit, but as Butcher's skill as an author grows, so does the story, and I find that it takes a little while to appreciate him, but Dresden is just a really good dude, and you can't help but want good things to happen to him, even if Butcher won't allow it. One of the constant themes of the story is forcing Dresden into harder and harder situations. He's always the underdog, despite how much his power might grow. But Harry is a really relatable character. Despite possessing magical abilities, he's far from perfect. He struggles with self-doubt, he has a tendency to make impulsive decisions, but his growth and his devotion to his ideals are really awesome to see in action, and these relatable flaws humanize him and make him more of a three-dimensional character that we can empathize with. Now, Harry has this strong sense of justice and desire to protect the innocent, and I don't know, I've really just been appreciating his character more. I'm not caught up with the Dresden Files yet, but I do look forward to seeing how Harry continues to evolve. Next we have Kvothe from the Kingkiller Chronicle by Patrick Rothfuss. Now Kvothe goes through immense personal tragedy in his life, and he turns to music and learning to cope with this. Now he is definitely a polarizing character. While he is a genius in some regards, he's also a complete idiot sometimes. He can let his ego and his pride get the better of him, which leads him to make immensely reckless decisions that endanger himself and everyone around him. In fact, most of his problems are caused by his own reckless actions, and I think this makes him a very compelling character. It actually took me a good reread or two to really notice the extent of Kvothe's flaws. I've seen a lot of reviews saying that he's this perfect character who's good at everything, and I honestly could not disagree more. He's definitely a prodigy, he's very capable, he's kind of a Sherlock character, where he's good at a lot of things, but he definitely is not perfect. And it's these flaws and the mystery revolving around his tragedy and why he's now hiding at the Waystone Inn that makes him so compelling. I love Kvothe. He's gone through so much trauma in his life, and following this sort of Oliver Twist story of his childhood, and watching him become more obsessed with his revenge, I just think he's a really fascinating character. Now, how could I not include on a list like this the charismatic scoundrel, the notorious con man who's known for his ability to swindle the Camor's upper crust out of their money? I'm talking about Locke Lamora. You know, this is a morally compromised character. He's not exactly a good guy, but he's the better of two evils. He's the head of a thieving crew called the Gentleman Bastards, and he'll do whatever it takes to survive. He's a scheming, hilarious anti-hero who has some incredible dialogue and relationships, especially with his best friend, Jean. Lynch has developed these two characters so well. It feels like they've known each other forever. And they have some incredible dialogue, some of the best I've ever read. They're kind of codependent on each other, so I can't really mention one without the other. These are two incredible characters, and Scott Lynch has done just a phenomenal job at developing them. His Grace, His Excellency, the Duke of Ankh, Blackboard Monitor, Commander Sir Samuel Vimes of the Ankh-Morpork City Watch. Samuel Vimes is the commander of the City Watch, the largest city of Discworld, Ankh-Morpork. All those words probably sounded so odd to you if you've never read Discworld. Let me tell you though, Sam Vimes is probably my favorite character in Discworld so far, and there's some incredible characters in this series. He embodies pretty much all the great tropes of detective books, but he also feels very unique as well. He has incredible dry humor and this jaded perspective that you would normally expect in a broken man, but he he's still driven and dedicated, and he has great leadership abilities. Vimes is the type of character that just acts as a magnet. As soon as he's on the page, it just elevates the entire scene and the dialogue and the relationships with all the other characters. You just can't help but be glued to the page, and the Discworld books are pretty quick reads in the first place, but I feel like I can never put the book down when I'm reading The City Watch. His rise from alcoholic policeman to someone much more respected, and the growth and development of the Watch under his command have together been one of the major threads of the Discworld series, and my personal favorite arc in the Discworld books I've read so far. Samwise Gamgee, we would all be lucky to have one friend like this in our life. Sam is just an incredibly loyal and steadfast companion to Frodo throughout The Lord of the Rings. And all of his endearing qualities have captured the hearts of readers. His willingness to set his own safety aside to stand by Frodo, to leave the comfort of the Shire and head into certain danger, he just really embodies the essence of true friendship and devotion. And despite being a humble hobbit with no experience adventuring whatsoever, Sam demonstrates immense courage and determination in the face of danger. And of course, he provides some much needed lighthearted moments in the darkest parts of the journey, reminding readers that even in the bleakest of times, there can be joy and camaraderie. And of course, I gotta mention Sean Astin's performance of Sam in the movies is legendary. It is perfection. Kaladin, stressed, depressed, and storm-blessed. He is plagued by his internal struggles, he's haunted by his past failures, and burdened by this strong sense of responsibility. Kaladin is a character that faces a constant battle against depression and self-doubt, and the weight of protecting those around him. Sanderson does a great job with integrating mental illness into his characters, and I feel like Kaladin is someone who a lot of people are going to relate with. How could you not like Kaladin? He is this honorable character that is just filled with this fierce determination to protect others while battling his own inner demons. And I do feel like maybe in the fourth book that Sanderson is a little bit heavy-handed with some of the ways he handles mental illness, but I still just really enjoy Kaladin's character arc. I can't wait to see what happens in book 5. And I feel like he's overall just such a fun character to read. There's so many scenes with Kaladin where you just want to jump out of your seat and, you know, fist pump the air because he did something epic. He has that perfect amount of hero qualities, but also mixed in with a bunch of flaws that make him so interesting. Now, obviously, one of the most compelling and complex characters is Tyrion Lannister from A Song of Ice and Fire. He's also one of the few people in that series that truly knows who he is and how others see him. Now, Tyrion is clever and witty. He doesn't really let people's opinions about him stop him, and he's often referred to as the Imp, which is sort of a derogatory nickname, but it also highlights Tyrion's ability to outsmart his opponents and use his intellect as a weapon. Really, the nickname kind of becomes a symbol of Tyrion's resilience, wit, and cunning as he overcomes societal prejudice and proves himself to be a formidable player in the political Game of Thrones. Despite Tyrion being accused for several crimes he didn't commit, he manages to power through and escape every time. He's a really great anti-hero, and he's thoroughly flawed, yet also endlessly sympathetic, and he has a lot of great lines. And really, his brother Jaime Lannister should probably share his spot on this list. Jaime has an emotional roller coaster of a journey. I'm actually not caught up with A Song of Ice and Fire, but Jaime's also one of my favorites so far. He's an incredibly complex character. However, I like Tyrion just a little bit more. Body found floating by the docks. And another Abercrombie character makes the list. Say one thing for Joe, say he writes incredible characters. I have never liked and disliked a character so much as I did with Sandan Glokta. He felt real. His reactions, motivations, everything. The hero turned broken man turned torturer who takes no pleasure in what he does. Glokta is such a complete and complicated character. You root for him despite his human frailty and his brutality. brutality. His physical struggles are visceral, and while he is clever and witty, he's also heartless and a sadistic cripple, but you end up understanding him through all his brilliant flaws and internal monologue. It's also his self-awareness that leads to his ability to not fear or care about anything other than what must be done, yet there's still humanity in him. And every chapter where Glokta is the point of view, it's full of tension because you never really know if he's going to torture someone to death or let them go and hide them from his own authorities. And honestly, that's my favorite thing about the First Law trilogy is I loved and hated everyone. Joe Abercrombie has some of the most gritty and realistic characters in fantasy. But they're not so far gone and morally gray that you can't relate to them or root for them in some way. Dalinar Kholin, the Blackthorn. In my opinion, Dalinar has Sanderson's very best character arc ever. He was a terrible person who committed war crimes. He's this former warlord turned peacemaker. It's sort of a redemption arc backwards, where he starts off as someone who's trying to get forgiveness. Then later on, we kind of figure out how horrible of a monster he actually was. Nobody really trusts him because of all the murdering he did when he was the Blackthorn. But sometimes a hypocrite is nothing more than a man in the process of changing. Not only is Dalinar a brilliant character, but he's inspiring to the reader, and that's the type of character that I really love to read. I really love a good redemption arc. Next up, we have Rand from the Wheel of Time. Now, Rand came a long way from the Two Rivers. He definitely started off as sort of a vanilla farm boy, chosen one for a while, but then he grows into such a complex character. Now, without giving away too many spoilers, Rand is the chosen one. He's destined to confront the Dark One in a final battle. However, the prophecies foretell his death on the rocks of Shel Ghul, and this burden forces him to grapple with the realization that his life is no longer his own. And so he has the weight of destiny on his shoulders, as well as the lives of all of his loved ones. And throughout the series, the taint on the magic source drives male magic users mad, and Rand is no exception. And as we witness his descent into madness, the narrative just becomes incredibly interesting, because you see it from his point of view, and also from the point of view of others. From other people's point of view, he goes absolutely insane, but when you're in Rand's head, you understand everything he's thinking, and you know why he does what he does, even if you know some of his decisions are made due to the madness. And just seeing him gradually go from a normal sheep herder to the Dragon Reborn, the prophesied savior of the world, and possibly the most feared man on the planet, is very epic. And in number 1, in my opinion, Fitz Chivalry Farseer from the Realm of the Elderlings books by Robin Hobb is the deepest, most well-developed character that I've read in fantasy, and he gets better with every book. Now, I've still only read the Farseer trilogy. I know there's more Fitz later on in the Realm of the Elderlings, but he already has his place as my favorite. I went through such a range of emotions and experiences with this character, even to the point of, calling him an idiot at times when he messed up, but then still caring so deeply about his story and relating to him. Now, you go through a lot of pain and trauma with this character. Robin Hobb is known for all the emotional damage her characters go through, and Fitz is a prime example of this. I thought I didn't get that emotional when reading, but then along came the Farseer trilogy. The development of his character over time and watching him grow and change is one of the biggest pleasures I've had as a fantasy reader. And if you like character-driven stories and you don't mind a slow burn, a slower pace, then you are in for an amazing experience. Hobb is by far one of the best character writers out there. So major shout out to Fitz, Night Eyes, and the Fool. And those are my top 20 favorite fantasy characters. Let me know all of yours in the comments. I would love to hear or see how your list is different from mine, because there's so many characters, again, that I really wish I could have included on this list. I was going to put Conan the Barbarian, Elric of Melniboné, Nynaeve from the Wheel of Time. That's a character I really didn't like, but then I really did like as she grew throughout the books. Lyra from His Dark Materials, Sabriel from the Abhorsen series by Garth Nix, Aragorn, Arya, Logan Ninefingers. You can see how there's just so many characters out there. It was very difficult to make this list. Anyways, if you are looking for just a really fun community of fellow fantasy readers, then make sure to go join my Discord server because it's been growing a lot recently. It's becoming this really fun and welcoming community that you should be a part of. Also, if you want to help support the channel and make these videos possible, like seriously, I wouldn't be able to put so much time and effort into the editing and everything in these videos if it wasn't for everyone over on Patreon. So I appreciate the support. Anyways, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed.